Hello and welcome to this BC Ministry of Agriculture video on writing your sanitation plan for BC fish and seafood processors. On January 1st, 2017, the Fish and Seafood Act was introduced in British Columbia. As part of this, the BC Fish and Seafood Licensing Regulation requires all operators to have a HACCP-based food safety plan and a sanitation plan. This video will guide you through the steps to make a sanitation plan to meet this requirement. A fisheries inspector will review both your food safety plan and the sanitation plan when they inspect your facility. If you distribute foods outside of British Columbia, you may need to meet federal regulatory requirements instead of provincial regulatory requirements. Please contact the Canadian Food Inspection Agency for federal guidelines. For more details on registering with the CFIA, please visit www.inspection.gc.ca or call their BC office at 604-292-5700. This video is meant to accompany the BC Ministry of Agriculture's Sanitation Plan Workbook. A copy of this document is available from the Ministry of Agriculture website. In the workbook from pages A6 to A10, there are templates for you to use. These are also available from the Ministry of Agriculture website. You do not have to use these templates, and you can write your sanitation plan in any way that works for you and your company, but you must meet the requirements of the regulation. To help you write your sanitation plan, we'll describe the cleaning and sanitizing requirements, describe cleaning and sanitizing agents, and describe the pesticides used in your establishment. So what is a sanitation plan? It's a document that describes how to clean and sanitize your food processing establishment, including the equipment, utensils, and all food and non-food contact surfaces. Your sanitation plan should focus on preventing contamination of your food products by biological, chemical, and physical hazards. The BC Fish and Seafood Licensing Regulation requires your sanitation plan to have 3 parts. The first part is to identify the cleaning and sanitizing requirements for all areas, equipment, and utensils used in production of your products. The second part is to identify all the cleaning and sanitizing agents used and to describe their concentrations and intended use. The third part is to identify all the pesticides used in your establishment. Part 1 is to describe the cleaning and sanitizing requirements. Identify all the areas of your establishment, inside and out, all the equipment, all the utensils, and all food contact surfaces and non-food contact surfaces. Indicate how those are going to be cleaned and sanitized. Then indicate how often these are to be cleaned and sanitized. You should say who will do the cleaning and sanitizing. And then lastly, you'll indicate how you're going to keep a record of when those areas, equipment, utensils, and surfaces are cleaned and sanitized. Here's an example of a cleaning and sanitizing requirements form. A copy of this is available on page A6 of the workbook. The example shown here is for cleaning and sanitation of one area, one piece of equipment, and one utensil in your facility. You'll need to describe the same things for each of your areas, all of your equipment, and all of your utensils. Also shown is an example of a weekly cleaning record. Blank templates of these documents can be found in the appendix of the Sanitation Plan Workbook, starting on page A6. Your completed sanitation plan must include the cleaning and sanitation requirements for all areas of your establishment, the cleaning and sanitation requirements for all equipment in your establishment, the cleaning and sanitation requirements for all utensils such as spoons and whisks and bowls, as well as a cleaning record. Here we have an example of a cleaning and sanitizing requirements table for one area of an establishment. In this case, it's a refrigerated cooler, and it describes the interior and exterior cleaning requirements. Column 1 describes what's being cleaned, and column 2 describes how it will be cleaned. Before the area can be cleaned, there should be some preparation before the cleaning activities. The cleaning procedure starts by staff donning the personal protective equipment required. This is an important part as gloves, safety goggles, safety shoes, or masks may be required for using different chemicals. The next step is to remove food and packaging materials from the room. This is important to prevent cross-contamination from chemical sprays. The third step is to turn off power or lock out or tag out. This is a good practice so that staff do not get injured while they perform their cleaning duties. Next, cover the electrically sensitive areas with plastic. Electrical components of equipment can be damaged by sanitation activities, so it's very important to protect these from water sprays to prevent very costly damage. Next, remove any ice buildup using a plastic scraper and pick up any pieces of broken skid, food, or packaging material. This is collecting all the physical hazards and placing them in a garbage bin. Then staff should sweep the floor and dispose of debris. The instructions require that employees ensure the drain is covered with a drain cover and that they check the temperature of the water, detergent solution, and sanitizer. They must be between 43 and 45 Celsius. Then they actually verify the concentration of the cleaner and the sanitizer using chemical test strips. The second part of this procedure is to pre-rinse the area with hot water to loosen soil buildup. This hot water should be at least 43 Celsius. Then they apply the detergent. They turn on the switches on the equipment for the detergent and air supply and adjust the air to provide the proper amount of foam, if that's the method used. Then using the hose, they apply detergent on all surfaces of the refrigerated room, from the bottom to the top. They ensure that detergent is applied evenly over the entire area. It's important not to let the detergent dry, but it must remain in contact with the surface for 5 to 10 minutes. Then scrub all areas to remove soil buildup. Step 4 is rinsing. We rinse all areas with hot water from the top to the bottom to remove the detergent from all surfaces. This prevents chemical cross-contamination. The hot water should be at least 43 Celsius. And using a squeegee, we remove all excess water from the floor. It's important that there is no standing water in your establishment whenever you can avoid it. Step 5 is to inspect the area to ensure the area is cleaned effectively. Ensure there's no visible soil buildup or food residue present. A flashlight is useful at this point. If there is soil buildup still found, repeat steps 2 through 5 for re-cleaning. Step 6 is to sanitize. In this case, they turn the sanitizer on the foam unit, and then using the hose, they apply a sanitizer evenly over the entire area. In this case, there is a no-rinse sanitizer being used, so the next step is to clean up and remove all their tools and chemical containers to appropriate storage areas. Then they remove the protective plastic from all of the electrical surfaces. After describing the method of cleaning, the table is completed by saying when the cleaning happens and who is responsible for it. Next, we'll describe the cleaning and sanitizing requirements for a piece of equipment, in this case, a bandsaw. We'll begin with the preparation steps. First, the employees don their personal protective equipment. Then they turn the power off to the bandsaw and lock out and tag out the machine. Then they remove all food and packaging materials from the area and disassemble the bandsaw. They collect all tools and parts in a small bowl to prevent physical hazards. Then they sweep the floor and remove debris. They ensure the drain is covered. Then they prepare the sanitizer and detergent solutions according to the manufacturer's instructions and check the concentration with test strips or test kits. They also ensure that the water is of suitable temperature. Next, the employees rinse the machine with hot water to loosen soil buildup. This hot water should be at least 43 Celsius. Step 3 is to apply detergent. Using a cloth, staff apply detergent to the bandsaw manually. They make sure the solution is applied evenly over the entire surface before scrubbing it with a brush to remove soil buildup. The detergent must remain in contact with the equipment surface for 5 to 10 minutes and is not allowed to dry out. The next step is rinsing the machine with hot water to remove detergent from all surfaces. This hot water should be at least 43 Celsius. Step 5 is to inspect the equipment to ensure it's cleaned effectively. If there is soil buildup found, repeat steps 2 through 5. Step 6 is sanitizing the bandsaw. Using a cloth, staff apply sanitizer evenly on the equipment. In this case, they're using a no-rinse sanitizer, so they do not rinse the equipment, but instead leave the sanitizer on the equipment for the time determined by the manufacturer's instructions. The next step is to reassemble the bandsaw, and they ensure that all parts are in place and no parts are missing. Then they remove plastic covers from the electrically sensitive areas, remove the lockout tags, collect all cleaning materials and tools, and return them to the storage area. Now that they've described how this equipment will be cleaned, they say when it will be cleaned. In this case, it's daily. They also name the bandsaw operator as who will be cleaning and sanitizing this piece of equipment. Next, we'll look at the cleaning and sanitizing requirements for a utensil. In this case, a knife. Here we see the preparation steps where staff put on their protective gear for using chemicals, and in this case they clean and sanitize all sink compartments of their 3-compartment sink before they're used for cleaning. Then they make the 3-compartment sink solutions, adding soap, hot water, and sanitizer as follows. In the first compartment, they add detergent at 43 to 45 Celsius. In the second compartment, warm water. And in the third compartment, a sanitizer solution, again 43 to 45 Celsius. Staff verify the temperature of the water and the concentration of the chemicals used. At this point, they do an important activity and record the concentration check. Staff scrape the knife with a plastic brush to remove any food or soil buildup before cleaning. Then they pre-rinse it with hot water to loosen any soil, and then they apply detergent by placing the utensil in the first sink compartment filled with detergent solution. Then they scrub with a brush to remove any soil buildup before rinsing it. Step 5 is rinsing, where they place the knife in the second compartment of the sink with hot water. Then they inspect it to ensure that it's clean. If it's still unclean, they repeat steps 2 through 5. If it's clean, they sanitize it by placing it in the third sink compartment filled with sanitizer for at least 2 minutes or as directed by manufacturer's instructions. The last step is to dry the utensil by placing it on a clean rack for air drying and to clean up. Looking at the written procedure, we see that we've described how it's to be cleaned, and we describe that when it will be cleaned is daily, and who will be cleaning it is a sanitation employee. Here we see an example of a weekly cleaning record. You'll see that this example of a cleaning record includes the areas, equipment, and utensils. Examining this table, we see that during this week the room was cleaned, and that every day the bandsaw and the knife were cleaned. You should note on May 4th, the sanitation was done, but it was deemed to be ineffective, and so re-cleaning was instructed by the supervisor. We also see the cleaner's initials, and we see the initials of an individual verifying the cleaning and the date of verification. Now it's your turn. Write the cleaning and sanitizing requirements for each area of your facility, for all the equipment in your facility, and for all the utensils you use in processing your products. Very useful here would be equipment manufacturer's instructions on cleaning, as well as chemical use instructions from your chemical supplier or the chemical label. Now we move on to Part 2, where you write a form which describes the cleaning and sanitizing agents you use in your establishment. You'll need to name every chemical you use and describe the concentration it's used at and what its intended use is. A cleaning agent is a product used to remove food, dirt, grease, and/or soil from a surface. Detergents and degreasers are examples of cleaning agents. You could also call them soap if it's a detergent. A sanitizing agent is a product or process used to kill microorganisms or reduce their numbers to safe levels. Bleach, which is a chemical agent, or heat are both sanitizing agents. It's important to note that you must use a cleaning agent if your sanitizing agent is to be effective, Most times, the soil will protect the microorganisms from the sanitizer. Effective sanitation requires a cleaner and a sanitizer. The next step in Part 2 is to write down in your table which cleaners and sanitizers you use. Templates of the forms for cleaning agent identification and sanitizing agent identification are in the Sanitation Workbook on page A10. They're also available from the BC Ministry of Agriculture website. You'll need to give the name of each of your cleaners and sanitizers. You need to describe its mixing instructions and concentration, then describe its intended use and storage location. Now it's your turn. Describe all the cleaning and sanitizing agents used in your establishment. Use the forms from page A10 on your workbook and identify the name of the chemical, its mixing instructions, its intended use, and storage location. Now we're going to complete Part 3, which is the identification of all pesticides used in the establishment, including their uses and their storage requirements. A pesticide is a product used to control pests in your establishment. In your sanitation plan, you must write down the names of any pesticides used, instructions for using them, and instructions for storing them. For example, they must be stored in a secure way away from all incoming materials, including packaging materials and outgoing foods. Since pesticides are very toxic, remember not to keep them stored near your regular cleaning and sanitizing chemicals either. You'll also need to include dosage or concentration instructions. Now we're ready to fill in the last table of your sanitation plan. This is the pesticide identification table. For every pesticide you use, you'll need to name the pesticide, describe its dosage and concentration of use, describe the intended use or pest of concern, and name the storage location for your pesticide. Remember, if you have a pest control operator, they may be using pesticides for you in your establishment, but you need to record what they're doing in this form. Now it's your turn. Get a copy of the pesticide identification table from page A10 of the Sanitation Plan Workbook. Then name each pesticide, detail the dosage and concentration, describe the intended use, and describe the storage location. Now let's recap. To complete Part 1 of your sanitation plan, you'll need to describe the cleaning and sanitizing requirements for all areas, all equipment, and all utensils of your facility. As well, you'll need to have a cleaning record. To meet the requirements of the regulation for Part 2, you'll need to name all the cleaning agents and sanitizing agents used in your facility, with their mixing instructions and concentrations, plus their intended uses and their storage locations. The third and final part of the sanitation plan that you need to write to comply with the BC Fish and Seafood Licensing Regulation is to identify all the pesticides used in the establishment. Then add details on dosage, intended use, and storage. Let's check your progress. Have you completed the following? Cleaning and sanitizing requirements tables that cover all areas, equipment, and utensils, including all food and non-food contact surfaces? Do you have a cleaning record? Have you written a cleaning agent identification table and a sanitizing agent identification table? And lastly, have you written a pesticide identification table? If so, congratulations! You've completed your sanitation plan. Please make sure you've also completed a food safety plan, as the Fish and Seafood Licensing Regulation also requires such food safety plans. If you have not written your food safety plan yet, please use the Food Safety Plan Workbook from the Ministry of Agriculture website and refer to the other videos in this series. Thank you for watching this BC Ministry of Agriculture video on writing sanitation plans for BC fish and seafood processors.